Hello, I'm Ian Brown. I want to ask you a question. It has to do with an aspect of human rights that doesn't get talked about a lot because the people it applies to are generally not understood as full human beings. I'm talking about the intellectually disabled, people who may or may not be physically disabled, but who are intellectually challenged as well, who can't tie their own shoes or plan a day, who can't play the piano or write a sentence or make money in any way, who often can't live their lives on their own. The Canadian philosopher Jean Vanier once described the intellectually disabled as the most oppressed people in the world. They're the kind of people we don't like to talk about because they make us nervous. That's why at many points in our history we have simply stuffed them away in institutions or murdered them, or, as we do today, made a big deal of including them, albeit in very narrow ways, because the intellectually disabled are hard to include. They cost a lot of money, they remind us that there are problems we can't fix, and they remind us of our own hidden vulnerabilities, of the fact that we don't have any control over our lives. I want to talk to you about the intellectually disabled, and we all do these things. But I want to talk to you about the intellectually disabled because I have a problem which relates to this question I want to ask you. My son Walker is intellectually disabled. He was born with CFC syndrome. There are 150 people like him on the planet. He's 17 now. He looks 10. He has the mind of a 2-year-old, and he always will. He can't swallow or speak, and because he can't talk, I don't always know what's bothering him. Quite a lot seems to. He hits himself if you let him. He can't reason, but he can walk. He's a great walker. That's why we called him Walker. So he is catastrophically mobile. He needs 24-hour supervision. He is what you and I would call severely intellectually disabled. And needless to say, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of money to keep him safe and healthy, about $200,000 a year of taxpayer money and another $50,000 of my own money before taxes. So while I worry about his health, I worry even more whether his life has any value, if it has any value at all, given that so much of it is lived on the periphery, on the edge of normal. And I don't worry about this because I'm sentimental or a romantic. People talk about inalienable human rights and values, but I personally am a realist. I want you, as a society, to care about him after I am gone. And if you see value in Walker, if I can convince you that he might be of actually immense importance to your own non-disabled lives in the future when you're searching for a little bit of meaning in what you did while you were here, if I can convince you of that, then you might support him and make sure he has a home and a community to belong to so that you can visit him and keep him company and get back to who you were. But how do I get you to see the human value in someone who most people think of as less than fully human, me included some of the time, whose rights are in fact limited by his capacity, and for whose kind we can't even build enough housing? If Walker were here, mind you, I mean, you would like him. You know, he can, like most of us, be a very charming person some of the time. If he were here right now, he would walk amongst the chairs and he would sit on your laps and he would visit. He likes to do that. He loves shiny things. He would love your sweater, for instance. He'd really like that, and he'd love your necklace. Oh, hi. You'll love your necklace. He especially likes women. I don't know why, but he does. And he seems, when he gets into your lap, to like very much to stare down women's blouses. And he does, and I'm not joking, he does this so consistently, in fact, and so deliberately, that I once said to my wife, Johanna, I think that's part of the syndrome. And she said, no, that's actually hereditary. And of course, if he were here, I would be watching him as I speak. Even though I am a man, have learned to multitask. And But eventually, I would get distracted too, probably by a blouse. And when that moment of distraction occurred, and only at that exact moment, Walker would sweep whatever he could, crystal glasses or laptops or your eyeglasses or your jewelry, to the floor, and then he would throw his head back and he would laugh uproariously, ha, 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 ha. And I used to think, that he was a tiny psychopath. But after the 1000th time, I began to understand why he did it. And Walker senses that he is not like everyone else. He knows that he is not as capable as you or me. But every once in a while, when I'm distracted and he wreaks havoc on the landscape, he gets to prove for a moment that he can outsmart me, that he can be my equal. And I used to think this must be a huge liberation for him to be as smart as his dad, if only for a moment. But now I realize that it's a much bigger liberation for me. Because by making himself my equal, he makes me his equal. And that really is a liberation for me from the endless and back-breaking list of expectations I normally carry, that we all carry. I mean, he will never make any money or go to Harvard or marry the perfect girl or get the great job or do anything that will reflect glory on himself or, more importantly, on me by conventional standards. He will also never disappoint me. He will only ever be the flawed human being that he is, but he will let me be one as well. And all I have to do is to be his companion and his friend. And you can call this love, and you can even call it a human right if you have to. And we are just two inept human beings trying to figure out how to connect and have a laugh. And that seems to me to be a fundamental human right as well, but one that most of us deprive ourselves of by worrying about more important things. In Walker's unfixable world, I am as disabled as he is. And, of course, these days, we're all disabled a lot of the time. We're incapable of reversing catastrophic climate change. We're incapable of avoiding war in Crimea, it seems. We're incapable even of getting rid of a crack-addicted mayor. But we have to pretend that we were powerful regardless. And this pretense gets in the way of effective action. So the list of gifts that I have been given by Walker, an incomplete human being, turns out to be quite long. I mean, he has shown me, among other things, that fragility is universal and way, way, way more powerful than it looks. So, my question, if you built him and his pals a community of their own, where they could be respected for who they are rather than for what we so desperately want them to be and try to make them into. If you built that, you could visit him and his friends and remind yourselves of what we all have in common, of what makes us human, sometimes with rights. Would that, this is the question, would that convince you that he is a full human being with a contribution to make, no matter how subtle that contribution is, and therefore a human being with the right to be taken as seriously as any of us? That is the question I wanted to ask you. Thank you.